right, good morning, everyone. As the host mentioned, my name is Edith Pencil. I head employee services for Performance Audit Group, and I'm absolutely delighted to be moderating this topic on employee experience and being surrounded with wealth of knowledge, very experienced professionals and leaders in the space. And so we all know that collecting employee feedback is relatively easy, but the more bigger challenge that we face in the world of work is taking action, taking meaningful action in responding to employee feedback. So today we're going to really dive into that topic, and I'd like to just kick things off with having each one of our panelists introduce themselves. Maybe perhaps tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're most passionate about in the employee experience realm. So maybe we'll start with you, Debbie.
Everyone's looking at me, so I guess I go first. So good morning, everyone. My name is Debbie Singh, and I get the pleasure to serve at an acute care hospital about 90 minutes north here of Toronto, so Orillia Soldiers Memorial Hospital. I have the role of Vice President of People Strategy and CHRO, and I also hold a clinical side of the portfolio, which includes quality, risk, legal, and interprofessional practice. So it's been quite a go to see both ends of the spectrum. I've been in HR for about 30 years and been very blessed to work across international as well. So what makes me passionate about the employee voice is that it creates an employee experience. And without that voice, what do you really have? You can have any product you want in the world. You can have any funding that you want in the world. But if you don't have the people with the passion, and for us to understand their why, then where are we? So for me, creating the space for voice is imperative.
Couldn't agree more.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Elizabeth McSavany. I'm the Chief People Officer for Zurich Insurance in Canada. Zurich is a global multinational insurance company with over 60,000 employees globally, and we've been in Canada for over 100 years. I've worked in HR my whole career. I've had the pleasure of working across different industries. I've worked in tech, I've worked in government, worked in consumer goods, and now insurance. I've been in insurance a lot longer than I actually thought I would. Very interesting industry. But I've also had the opportunity to work in Canada and the US, and I think what really excites me about this topic is how do we take the employee voice and translate it into action and business action and strategy. In insurance, probably much like a lot of you in your industries, we're sort of at this precipice of transformation. We have risk and governance that we look at, especially in the advent of the word we're not supposed to use today, which is AI, and our customer expectations. And that really gives us an opportunity to accelerate the opportunity to get the voice of our employee, and how do we translate that into measurable business outcomes. And really, this is about how do you allow employees to influence your business decisions rather than just react to it.
Awesome, thank you so much.
Hi, everyone. Steph or Stephanie Redivo, pronoun she, her, Employee Experience and Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Director at TransLink. If you're not familiar with TransLink, think TTC in Vancouver. I have been there for 6 years. My background really is private, I was in private tech, software, change management, education. And what sort of drives me, or this passion around employee experience, is really, I get to do something that I really love, and that being able to develop our people is so important given, all of the uncertainty today. And I think, it is those individual sort of people that you get to interact with every day and find out that, whether it's mentorship programs and whatnot, as we get into it, it's really important. And whether whether I sort of say to our employees, whether you stay in our organization or not, I really want you to be a champion, and that you say that you have a really great experience at the organization.
Wow, I'm already very excited about this discussion. So we've already started to get grounded in the topic. So when you think about the term employee voice, can you maybe share with us what that means to you in relation to the employee experience? So maybe we'll start with you.
Yeah. Pardon me, it's like 6:30, so I wrote some notes on the West Coast. Okay. I think the employee experience and Can you ask the question again?
Yeah, just
Sorry.
when you think about the term employee
Yeah.
voice,
Yeah.
what does that mean to you in relation to the overall employee experience?
Yeah. I mean, that really is our foundation. I mean, we heard from the previous discussion, if you don't take the time to hear employee voices, what are you really doing as leadership? You're really you're creating a strategy without hearing the employees, and employees decide with their feet as to whether they're going to stay or not. So I just feel like it's just really the foundational.
Couldn't agree more, Steph. How about you, Elizabeth?
I mean, I saw this firsthand working. Does anyone here work in manufacturing or have worked in manufacturing? So nobody tells it like it is, like a factory floor. I spent a couple of years working in Las Vegas in an ice cream factory that they will tell you exactly how they feel. And it was firsthand experience for me of why listening to your employees matters so much, because you're not going to get anything through them. If you're working with blue collar or factory floor employees, you can't pass anything by them without having them feel like they've had their voice heard. But if you think of it on a broader spectrum, your employees are the ones that are the closest to the task. When you escalate into senior leadership roles, whether you're working in HR or you're working in the business, the further you get from the work itself, unfortunately, the further you get disconnected from what actually is going to move the needle in terms of change. And so to me, it's an imperative, it's a requirement that we have an opportunity to have listening channels where we can get clear, direct, concise feedback, and then most importantly, what are you going to do with it? Because employees are not going to expect you to do everything and fix everything, but you better believe you need to do something. It needs to be quick, and they need to have a feeling that you've actually listened to them and you've communicated that back to them. And so I really do think it's a business imperative.
I love that. Thank you so much.
And I agree with everything that's been said, and I would say at our hospital, one of the key things that we do to listen to the employee voice is to meet people where they're at. So we round every single day, and we go through the hospital, not because we have to, but because we want to. And there's nothing better than rounding on the floors and seeing people in action. And if they have a minute to share where they are or what they're going through, great. It's getting it in the moment so it's as genuine as humanly possible. So for us, that's important in terms of the voice. And what I also would say is that every voice matters. So it's not about the ones that are the loudest. Pay very close attention to the ones that aren't heard and create the space and the forum so that we can actually listen. And lastly, I would say that the employee voice is the strategy. Again, where would we be if we didn't have our people? I can tell you that through COVID and working in a hospital, we would not be where we are today if we didn't focus in and harness in on the employee voice. It made a difference in terms of us being able to support our people so that they could enable patient care, compassionate care, which at the end of the day is the reason why we're here. So that voice was imperative.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Debbie. And I'm going to continue with you and kind of touch on a little bit of what Elizabeth alluded to and the importance of organizations responding quickly. So many organizations collect feedback. Actually, show of hands, how many of you are collecting feedback in your organizations? All right, this is great. So many organizations are collecting it, but I think where the challenge comes is how we're responding. And Elizabeth talked about the importance of responding very quickly. Debbie, perhaps you can share with us what separates organizations from the ones that collect and those who actually respond and act quickly.
So I think the first thing when you're looking to collect feedback, we all know we do. Let's hope we do something with it. The first thing is thank people. Don't think that it's easy to give feedback, because sometimes it isn't. And we want people to be honest and genuine when they do give it. So the first thing I want to always do is acknowledge and give thanks. And the second thing is to engage people in creating the solution, so co-create. That to me is one of the best ways to make sure that there's what we call follow-up and follow-through, and that there's an engaged commitment. So if someone gives you feedback, invite them to be part of that solution, that design, and that gives you the buy-in. I think for us, that's one of the key things we've done, and communication. We communicate so much, I can't even tell you, through many different channels and different groups, so that whatever feedback is given, it's not heard from one voice, but it's heard from multiple. What that does is it reinforces what that feedback is and how that voice is translated. And again, it drives right back to the business impact of why you selected the feedback, why you actioned it the way that you did, and why you didn't choose to action it. That's equally as important.
Love that. Anyone want to add on that, or?
I'm good.
Yeah, we're good. So how about we talk a little bit about the building of trust through the feedback loop. We talked about some organizations, many organizations are collecting and listening, but the actual action of taking meaningful change might not be always happening and happening quickly. So employees will they're often willing to share feedback once, but they'll only continue sharing the feedback if they see change or action being taken. So Stephanie, I'm going to point this question to you. How do you build trust and effectively do so to ensure that there's a effective feedback loop to employees?
Yeah, I think, and Jamie talked about it, trust equals psychological safety, right? Yeah. So I feel like even before you get to the engagement survey, you need to be building trust with your employees, right? And your engagement survey, whether you do one or not, or however you do it, or little pulse checks, those are moments in time. And I think when it comes to trust, you all know in your small teams or your big teams, trust sometimes is easily given and sometimes it isn't.
Right.
And so I think sort of as Debbie was kind of talking about with communication is you need to kind of communicate quickly and often and embed it throughout the year. So when we do our engagement surveys and then focus groups, with the information we try to, and I would say, a few years ago, we would do the engagement survey and then our executives would be like, great, check, we've done that for the year, we get our score, we get our information. But it was really my team to kind of help work with the executives quarterly to be like, okay, hey, so what are you doing? We're focusing on expectations this year as a company. How is that going? Taking the time. And I think, again, engagement and when the results are good are easy because it feels like it's a big celebration. But when it's not, I think that's the stuff that's really more important because you have to be open and honest. And the goal that you might have in January, who knows what happens in your organization come, mid-year, come end of year. So if you're not able to do what you said you're going to do, you have to own that and share and kind of how you're going to pivot or change. And I think employees appreciate that because they can very much tell when an executive gets up to speak and says, oh, everything is wonderful, and everybody at the table is eye rolling and like, we're not talking about that thing. So yeah, we've worked a lot with our executives to kind of own that transparency.
Yeah, the transparency is key, and I think, we all know that if the employees are not getting back that transparent feedback, the likelihood of them participating in the future survey or study is very low. So I think what we'll do is maybe move on to measuring employee sentiment. And so many organizations are moving beyond the typical employee engagement survey. Last year, in our organization, we had our engagement survey, but we also had focus groups to tap into the employee voice in active listening. So, Elizabeth, I'm going to point this one to you. What methods have you found most effective for understanding the employee experience in real time?
Can I just get a show of hands? I know we said how many of you are doing employee engagement surveys, and I think most of you put your hand up. How many of you are using other data points or metrics to measure employee sentiment? Just a show of hands. So I would love for, at the end of this session, everybody's hand goes up. Your engagement survey is a point in time. Mm-hmm. And listen, we've all seen it. Leaders game it, right? 2 weeks before, a month before, they start communicating all this great stuff they're doing, and they rally people around, and like magically, their survey results are amazing while the rest of the employees tanking, or the rest of their colleagues are tanking. You might have employees that are having a really bad day, and they fill out that survey, and as a leader, you're thinking, what am I doing wrong? So your employee engagement survey is a moment of time. You have to look at other things. You've talked about focus groups. So sometimes employee engagement surveys will require you to maybe do a deeper dive because there's something that's coming up or issues that are surfacing. So you might do a series of focus groups. You might do them at any point in the year because you're noticing something happening. I've certainly seen it in our business. We were starting to get these informal rumblings about a particular leader in a particular area of our business where we actually needed people to be really heads down and concentrating. And my HRBPs came to me with this idea of doing a series of concentrated focus groups that enabled us to dig under the surface to find out what's going on. You also conduct exit interviews when people are leaving. You probably do some stay interviews, and if you don't do those, you should do those as well to find out what keeps people with your organization. Yeah. You also have meaningful data at your fingertips. You have attrition data. I think we all measure attrition. We look at promotional opportunities, deployment, development. All of those data points tell you a story. And the one shameless plug I will give for AI is this is where AI can really benefit us, because AI can take all of these vast amounts of data, synthesize it really quickly, and then you as leaders with your managers can really get at the trends and things that are going on in your business to understand where you can have the most impact, where you can move the needle most. And so that's where that human element, that judgment comes in. How can you take all of those data points? You should also be looking at your business metrics, anything that drives performance in those different units, sales targets. We look at underwriting profitability. Data really, really matters in this, and so it's imperative for you to look at this enterprise-wide, holistically. How can I pull all of that data together quickly to start drawing some trends and analysis that will influence how we move forward?
Powerful, yeah. I'm trying to take mental notes and keep up, but no, that was great, Elizabeth. Anyone want to add on to that? Yeah.
I would just say that, so we do all of those, and yes, I would encourage stay interviews. We actually do a 90-day interview. So, you get the classic probations, 3 months or 6, depending on how you want to drag it out. But you have a golden opportunity to really get a pulse of how your people are doing. In that first 90 days, they make the decision to stay or go. And so isn't it pivotal to have a conversation? And so we do. We don't do a survey. We don't do a flyby. We actually meet with each person because we know how much it costs to re-recruit. We know how much it impacts culture if we don't. So we take the opportunity after 90 days to check in. What's working well? What did we miss? What could we do better? Or who's shining so that we can align it to our values? Who demonstrates that genuinely? And again, that just embeds into practice what's happening day to day. And so that, again, when you're communicating, that journey of that employee is seen at multiple touch points.
Love that. And we talked a lot about the measurement now, and I'd love to tap into the strategic response and the different ways that maybe any of you have been implementing strategies to respond to employee feedback. So I'm going to direct this one actually to you, Debbie. Can you share an example where employee feedback directly influenced a business decision, a strategy, program, or even a policy?
Sure. So I think the previous panel that was here spoke to using high potential talent to actually look at designing strategy. So we actually did something very similar. So our 2026 to 2031 strategy was an enhancement. And what we did is we picked one of our leaders, a director, and 4 high potential managers to actually guide us through the strategy. There wasn't a single external consultant used. They designed everything. They did the external reviews. They presented to the board. They engaged the entire base. That's 1,600 staff, 350 credentialed staff, and 86% unionized. That's a lot of different opinions in terms of where a strategy should be, especially in a hospital setting where budgets are as tight as they are. So how did they actually influence strategy? They drove it. They designed it, without a doubt. And you can see them within it. And actually, our strategy has something called the foundations. And that's all them. And they thought, we have this vision of a tree. And if you take a look behind the tree, what you don't see are the roots. So they designed something called the foundations. These are 3 elements that are not nice to haves, they're need to haves because we're going to do it. One is strong financials, because that's just an imperative for the sector. The second is continuous quality improvement, because they know that we will continue to learn to increase quality. Why? Because it's better care for our patients, it's better for our staff. And the kicker is the last one, is a culture of community and belonging. That's what the team member base said was imperative, not an option, not HR, driven for the base by the base. So for me, that's compelling in terms of how people and their voices can drive strategy and impact change, not for today or tomorrow, but 5 years through.
I love that, incorporating the employee in the actual strategy and helping to design that. I'm going to take that and put that in my back pocket. So anyone want to add on that in terms of any examples? Or?
Yeah, I think having the employee voice is imperative. I think about opportunities in different industries I've worked in where we galvanize the employees to get their say. I think we used a similar example when I worked in Unilever, where we went across every single factory and did these really deep dive focus groups. We did have a consultant, but we only had 2 in the room, and the rest were all employee-led. We got the voices of everyone, good, bad, and ugly. And it's important when you're doing any type of feedback loop or mechanism, it's important to identify the people that are really engaged. It's important, if you look at the end of the spectrum, who's really engaged, who's really like, I don't like this place, it's not gonna work, and who's somewhere in between. The people on sort of that red end of the spectrum, sometimes they're very hard to sway and to change their opinions. But what I have seen, the beauty in giving people a voice, or giving people even just a little bit of leeway to have their say and maybe see that some idea that they had manifested itself into something you did, you will start to see those arms uncross. I have seen even the most stubbornest of person open up very slowly, very, very slowly, when they saw an idea that they knew they had come to life. Yes. in a way. And you can't underestimate that value of allowing people the opportunity to be heard.
Actually, you hit it on the nail with that word heard, right? Mm-hmm. So the listening and strategies, they're all important, but I think the way employees really feel heard is when they see what they've shared come into action. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Does anybody have employee resource groups in their organization? Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna meld the EDI and employee experience together. So if you don't have employee resource groups, these are employee-run, identity-based groups, and they're another way to kind of listen. So we have a caregiver ERG focused on elder care, child care, and what was happening in our organization, and I'm sure this is in many organizations, what happens when your child gets sick? You call in sick, probably. And so this was brought up to us as, can we look at the organization to do something about this? Because, sick days are for when you're supposed to be sick. And our VP had said she has seen firsthand, when tragedy or some crisis happens and you go through all of your sick days. And so we implemented something called We Care Days. And they're 5 days that can be used as a benefits. It is for our exempt staff. We're a highly unionized shop as well, but it is something, and that it really wouldn't have come up if it wasn't from our employee resource groups. And so that is kind of one thing, if I can highlight, if you're thinking about it or contemplating, please come chat, because I can talk about the whole governance structure. I can talk about the good, bad, and the ugly of employee resource groups.
Love that stuff.
Yeah.
You. So I know we're getting close to time and probably want to leave some time for questions. But my last question, just very at a lightning speed, if each one of you can just quickly share if there was one thing you wanted all of us to take away from today's conversation on employee experience and the employee voice, what would that be? Maybe you could start,
Sure.
Steph.
Yeah. Very quickly, I would say if you're not hearing from certain people, find out why. Listen to and look for the quiet voices. In a time when I feel like we push ahead, business, go, 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 if you take the time to pause, who isn't in the room or who hasn't provided feedback? See if you can get that or, build that trust.
I would say if you're just listening, you're missing the boat. It's what are you doing with it? How are you communicating that back to people? And by the way, as HR practitioners, as leaders, we are the architects of this. We're the change enablers, the architects of change. We are, to the previous discussion, the seat at the table is already there. Yeah. This is a leadership challenge, and this is a challenge to all of your employees. So the biggest mistake you can do is let employees think that they just have an opportunity to give the feedback, leave it with you, and go off, and you're going to figure it all out. Or their manager's going to figure it all out. You need to engage them in the conversation, in the solutioning, in the action planning, so that they understand this is a place that you come to work every day. So if you really want to make this place a better place to work, you've got great ideas, help us bring those to life.
Yeah.
So agree with all of those, and I would say a few things. Meet people where they're at. That's really important. My phrase is always for the base, by the base, meaning that they help co-create. And for me, the most important is seek first to understand before you seek to be understood. How many times do we think, oh, I'm just going to put this program in place and it's going to work? How do you know? Did you ask? Do you care? So again, seek first to understand before you seek to be understood.
Yeah, love that. Well, that sort of wraps up our panel. We would love to open it up maybe for a question or two from the audience. If anyone has any questions. Yeah, a few.
How are you preparing managers to engage with employees, specifically around feedback?
Anyone want to take that?
It's always the challenge 101. How do you build better leaders? If anyone has a solution in this room, come find me. I've been trying to figure that out for the last 20 years. I haven't figured it out. All the points that we've talked about today, those are the types of things that you need to engage your leaders on. Common sense is not common. We all know that. You have some people that are better at it than others, but really making sure that your leaders have the tools that they need in order to be effective leaders, showing them their blind spots, understanding what their priorities are, what they care about. The question that was asked earlier about, when people are just being really difficult to deal with, like, where are you coming from with that? I'm trying to understand who you are as a leader, and that influences the type of information that I need to give you or the type of coaching I need to give you. And then if you have a really good clarity and understanding of your business and the business challenges, that enables you to be a more effective coach to really help them. So the tools are one thing, the coaching, and then the last piece I would say is that peer-to-peer accountability is really, really helpful. Managers learn really well when they have a manager kind of co-creator in that process, someone that's a safe space that they can bounce ideas off of, talk about similar challenges. So if you can create those opportunities for those peer-to-peer connections, those are incredibly powerful.
I'd probably just add to that consistency and a common language. So sometimes when you have managers come into an organization, they're bringing different skills from different companies and what they've learned. And at some point, they will need to unlearn, to relearn what your organization believes is valuable in terms of leadership traits and skills. So I would say taking a look at what is a common approach and language so that when you're communicating, there's less disconnect. I think that would also help in terms of being able to give appropriate feedback. And then in terms of feedback, feedback doesn't require a response. We often think that it does. And so to enable our managers to be able to just deliver it, they need to know that that's okay and be given the permission to do so.
Excellent. Thank you. Any other questions? Yeah.
Investments. Employee listening strategy is part of my portfolio, and I think we're lucky that engagement is not a challenge for us, but I want to touch on that enablement, that action planning piece. Where I'm coming from, action planning is a shared accountability between the business and HR. HR does the reporting and the results interpretation and the guidelines, but the action planning really sits with the business. I'm curious to know, how are you leading that action planning? How do you, drive the accountability working with the business? I know, each panelist is coming from a different sector and different, organization, so I'm curious to know how you're managing that in your context. Thank you.
I can take that. One of the things that I've sort of mentioned is we meet with every divisional leader quarterly to talk about kind of engagement and what they're working on. And you're right, the question around how do we hold people accountable is really the question. And as organizations, you have to decide, do you have, what's your performance review? Do you have behavioral competencies, this type of thing, right? And I think coming in from a sort of a shared approach, you know, Debbie, you talked about the meeting where they're at and helping to support them. And then at some point, it becomes the, okay, what's the organization going to do, right? Like, are they going to actually sort of have those conversations to be like, you're not being a leader, and we need you to step up or not. So be very careful. I feel like HR, we take it on, and we're willing to be creative to try to take it on, and we really have to be okay that if it isn't going to work, know that we've tried to do all the things, right?
Just building off of that, one of the things we haven't gotten it perfect yet, but on the leadership capability piece, we've started to incorporate that in our year-end alignment discussions when we're talking about the what and the how of delivery. We are an insurance organization. We are very focused on output, as I'm sure most of your organizations are. We care about profitability. We care about, you know, the performance of each of our portfolios. But what we've really been trying to advocate for is how leaders go about this is just as important, in some cases more important. And so we've been trying to incorporate in our sort of mid-year succession and leadership and year-end alignment those feedback results from our surveys and what leaders are or are not doing about it to try to hold them accountable at a more senior level.
All right, I think we're out of time. That wraps up our panel. Thank you to all these wonderful panelists.
Thank you.
And hope everyone enjoys the panel.